Hi, you guys. This is lesson 2-4, part 1, parts and total number stories. So what we are going to be working on today is to use parts and total diagrams to help solve parts and total number stories. Basically, what we're going to be doing is breaking apart number stories and figuring out, kind of like being detectives and sleuths, and figuring out what the parts mean so that we can write number sentences and solve word problems. It's a pretty cool skill to have. So, speaking of stories, I love a good story, right? I bet you do too. And there's a lot of stories out there, and in math, we have a lot of stories as well too that are super cool and fun to solve. So for this, you are going to need your math journal, page 36, number 1. That's the one that we're going to be working together on right now. So, math journal, page 36, number 1. I'm going to pull it up here as well. So, we are going to be reading the number story, as our directions say. For each number story, write question mark for the number you want to find. Write the numbers you know in the parts and total diagram, which is this over on the right-hand side of the page. Then we're going to write a number model down here and solve the problem, including answering the question. We're also going to check our work because good math students always check their work and ask themselves, how do I know if my answer makes sense? So let's practice, okay? We have a really handy-dandy resource for you this year, and we'll keep it in the classroom, and I encourage you to use it because it's going to help us become really good at solving word problems or number stories. And it is our guide to solving number stories, and we're going to refer to this as we go through our work today. So there's 1, 2, see if I can scroll down here, 3, 4 parts to it. So the first one says, what do we understand from the story? The second part to solving number stories is, what are we going to do? How are we going to go about solving our problem? Number 3 is answering the question. We're going to be solving it and always showing our work. And then the fourth part to solving number stories is to check our work. Does our answer make sense, and how do we know? So we'll go back to our problem. Oops, making you a little dizzy there. So I like to read a math problem 3 times so I know what they're talking about. So here's our first time. 2 pythons each laid a clutch of eggs. One clutch had 36 eggs. The other had 23 eggs. How many eggs were there in all? Let's read it one more time. 2 pythons each laid a clutch of eggs. One clutch had 36 eggs. The other had 23 eggs. How many eggs were there in all? Okay, if we go back in and check in on our number stories guide, it will tell us that the first thing we need to do is, what do we understand from the story? So we know that one clutch had 36 eggs, the other had 23 eggs. There were 2 pythons that each laid a clutch of eggs, and we are trying to find out how many eggs were there in all. All right, in our directions it said that we had to write a question mark for the number that we want to find. Okay, so since we are looking for a total amount of eggs here, that means that we know that one clutch had 36 eggs, so part of this would be 36. One other clutch had 23 eggs, so the other part of our problem had 23 eggs. We need to know the total number of eggs that we are looking for. All right, so I am going to just sneak off page for a second and grab my pen, come back on over. So I'm going to write a question mark, and you should too, in the total box, because we do not know the total. We need to find that out. We do know the part though. This one is 36. And the other part is 23. we also need to do one other thing after you have written that down, and we need to keep track of our units because everything, all numbers have a unit. So here we're talking about eggs. So I'm just going to write above my parts and total diagram, I'm just going to write units, eggs. And you should do that too because we'll need that when we go ahead and answer the problem. All right, we'll go back and check in on our sheet and see how we're doing. So now we need to figure out, number 2, what are we going to do? How are we going to go ahead and solve this problem? So a lot of choices that we can choose from. Maybe you'd like to draw a picture. Maybe you'd like to add. I think adding sounds like a pretty good bet in this case because we're trying to find a total and we have 2 addends or pieces that we can add together. So I'm just going to write down here, this is going to be showing you my work. 36 plus 23 is going to equal, okay, and this part is kind of up to you. How do you want to show me what 36 plus 23 is? Some of you might draw pictures. Some of you might use your fingers to count. Some of you might estimate by saying that 36 is pretty close to 40, 23 is pretty close to 20, add those together, subtract 4, 3, okay? Many different ways that you can go about solving this. I know, just by my many years of math, that my answer is going to be 59. Just by doing math in my head, okay? Keep in mind that this is just 36 ones plus 23 ones equal to 59 ones. Or you could say 3 tens and 6 ones plus 2 tens and 3 ones is equal to 5 tens and 9 ones, okay? Let's go back over and check our sheet. So we added to solve this number story. We answered the question, we solved the problem, we recorded our work, and when we go to actually write in the answer, we're going to have to write the answer with the units. We'll also make sure we check our answer. So let's go ahead and answer the question. We know that it is 59 eggs. I'm also going to write the unit eggs in there because right down here in the little parentheses it says unit, so I'm going to write eggs in there. The work that I showed you down here, 36 plus 23 is equal to 59. This is a number model. If you drew a picture, you would have to write it out in this format. So 36 plus 23 is equal to 59. Now, part 4 said, how do you know your answer makes sense? This is your opportunity to use some math talk and really show me what you know. And good mathematicians are always working on talking about math, and it might feel a little awkward to you, but I'd like to know how you know that your answer makes sense. So if Mrs. MacPhail just thinks out loud, I'm thinking to myself that, I know that together the total number of eggs had to be bigger than 36 because that was the highest number and I was adding together. That's just a sample response. You could also say things like, well, I knew that 36 was pretty close to 40 and 23 was pretty close to 20. So if I added them together, I knew that I would get about 60. So 59 is pretty close. This is just an opportunity for you to get comfortable with telling me how you are thinking about math when you're doing it.